Good afternoon, everyone. My presentation today is titled Medical Malpractice and the Legal Environment of Business. This topic is really interesting because it connects medicine, law, ethics, and business all together. We usually think of malpractice as a medical issue, but it's also deeply connected to how healthcare businesses operate and how the law protects both patients and providers. I also use an AI tool called ChatGPT, specifically the GPT-5 model by OpenAI. To help me research and organize this presentation. I'll talk more about how I used it and the pros and cons of AI later in the presentation. To start off, let's define what medical malpractice actually is. Medical malpractice happens when a healthcare provider, like a doctor, nurse, or hospital, fails to provide care that meets accepted medical standards, and that failure causes harm to the patient. So it's not just that a treatment didn't work, it's that the provider was negligent, meaning they didn't act the way a reasonably competent professional would have under similar circumstances. There are four main elements in any malpractice case. First is duty of care. The idea that once a professional relationship exists, the provider has a legal responsibility to care for the patient. Second is breach of duty. They fail to meet the proper standard. Third is causation. The breach must have actually caused harm. And fourth is damages, meaning the patient suffered measurable losses like medical bills, pain, or long-term disability. All four of these have to be proven for a malpractice lawsuit to succeed. Some common examples of malpractice include things like misdiagnosis, where a doctor fails to identify a condition or diagnoses the wrong one. Another big category is surgical errors, such as operating on the wrong body part or leaving instruments inside the patient. We also see medication errors, where the wrong drug or dosage is given, and birth injuries, which can harm both the mother and baby. And finally, failure to obtain informed consent. This means a doctor performs a procedure without clearly explaining the risk and alternatives, leaving the patient unaware of what could happen. These examples show that malpractice can occur at almost any stage of treatment, from diagnosis to surgery to follow-up care. Let's look at a recent real-world case that illustrates these ideas. In 2024, a jury in New Mexico awarded more than $412 million to a patient in what became one of the largest medical malpractice verdicts in U.S. history. The case involved New Mel Medical Center, a men's health clinic with multiple locations around the country. The patient came in complaining of fatigue and weight loss. Instead of running proper tests or referring him to a specialist, the clinic diagnosed him with erectile dysfunction without clear evidence and began giving him invasive penile injections 3 times a week. These injections caused permanent, irreversible damage and left him in constant pain. But what made the case even more significant was that it didn't just involve medical negligence, it also included fraudulent business practices. The clinic allegedly used aggressive marketing, misdiagnosed patients intentionally, and recommended unnecessary procedures to make more money. So this wasn't just a medical mistake, it was an ethical and business failure too. This case shows why understanding the legal environment of business is so important even in healthcare. First, there's duty and standard of care. Every business in the medical field must maintain ethical and professional standards, not just to avoid lawsuits, but to protect patients and maintain trust. Second, fraud and misrepresentation come into play when a company knowingly provides false information to make a sale. That violates consumer protection laws in addition to medical ethics. Third, this case highlights the financial and reputational risk for businesses. A $412 million verdict can bankrupt the company, and even before that, the bad publicity can destroy its credibility. So, from a business perspective, this case reminds us that compliance, risk management, and ethical decision making are not optional. They're essential parts of running a sustainable healthcare business. Now, if this exact same case had happened here in Texas, the outcome would likely look very different because of how Texas law is structured. Texas has specific statutes governing medical malpractice. First, there's a statute of limitations, which means a patient has only 2 years from the date of alleged malpractice or the end of treatment to file a lawsuit. After 10 years, the right to sue expires completely. Second, Texas has damage caps. This means there's a limit on how much money a patient can receive for non-economic damages like pain and suffering or emotional distress. The cap is generally $250,000 per healthcare provider and up to $500,000 total when multiple institutions are involved. Third, before the lawsuit can move forward, the patient must provide an expert medical report within 120 days, explaining how the doctor or clinic failed to meet the standard of care and how that caused the injury. Because of these laws, it's unlikely that a Texas jury could ever award a $400 million verdict like the one in New Mexico. The damages would be capped and the claim process more tightly regulated. These rules show how Texas has shaped its legal environment to balance patient protection with keeping healthcare businesses from excessive lawsuits. Texas is known for its tort reform. That means the state limits certain types of lawsuits and damage awards to create a more predictable business climate. From a business standpoint, this gives clinics and hospitals more confidence to operate without fear of enormous verdicts. It helps keep malpractice insurance costs lower and makes Texas more attractive for medical providers. But even with these protections, businesses can't be careless. They still face liability for economic damages, which include medical bills, future care, or lost wages. They also face punitive damages in cases involving intentional or reckless misconduct. So while Texas law limits some risk, it still expects medical businesses to operate ethically and maintain professional standards. I would also like to share how I created this presentation. I used ChatGPT, an AI tool from OpenAI. I asked it to help me summarize what medical malpractice is, find a recent case, and explain how Texas law would apply to it. It also helped me organize the content into slides and create a first draft of this script. AI tools like ChatGPT are very helpful because they can summarize complex information quickly, explain legal or technical terms in plain language, and help with formatting and structure. However, using AI also comes with both advantages and limitations. On the positive side, it saves a lot of time, it organizes ideas clearly, it helps simplify difficult topics like law and healthcare, and it makes it easier to prepare presentations or reports. But there are also drawbacks. AI can sometimes be outdated or inaccurate because it doesn't have real-time legal updates. It doesn't replace critical thinking or actual research. If someone relies too heavily on AI, the work might sound generic or lose originality. And importantly, AI is not a legal authority, so you always need to double check facts, laws, and cases. For me, AI was a great assistant and gave me structure and clarity, but I still had to verify all the legal details, check the sources, and rewrite sections in my own words. To wrap up, medical malpractice is more than just a mistake. It's a serious breach of professional duty that has legal, ethical, and business consequences. The 2024 Neumel Medical Center case showed how negligence and unethical business conduct can destroy both patients' lives and a company's reputation. When we look at the same situation through Texas law, we see how the legal environment of business shapes outcomes by limiting damages, setting deadlines, and requiring expert oversight. And finally, the use of AI tools like ChatGPT shows how technology can support our learning and productivity, as long as we use it responsibly and with human judgment. Thank you all for listening.